Her message came through at 8:17 p.m., and nothing about it made sense. And my mom's. Signal's bad here. I read it once, then again, then a third time, because her mother was sitting directly across from me, calmly sipping tea like nothing in the world had shifted. The room didn't change, but something inside me did. Because if Claire Whitfield was here, in her mother's living room, then where exactly was her daughter, Madison Whitfield? I didn't say anything at first. I watched Claire's hands as she set the porcelain cup down, steady, controlled, almost rehearsed. She looked at me the way she always did, polite, composed, slightly distant. There was no panic in her eyes, no confusión, no sign that her daughter had just claimed to be somewhere she clearly wasn't. And that was the moment the unease started to settle in. Not sharp, not loud, just slow and heavy, like something sinking beneath the surface. Madison and I had been together for 3 years, long enough to understand her habits, long enough to know when she was stressed, when she was lying, and when she was avoiding something. And this didn't feel like avoidance. This felt like construction, something intentional, something deliberate. Claire leaned back slightly and asked if I wanted more tea. Her tone was casual, but her timing felt calculated, as if she knew exactly when to speak to prevent silence from growing too loud. I shook my head. Then I looked at her, directly this time. Madison said she's here. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I simply placed the sentence between us and waited to see what it would do. Claire didn't flinch. She didn't even hesitate. She hasn't been here today. The answer came too quickly, too clean. No pause, no confusión, no attempt to reconcile the contradiction. Just a flat statement. And suddenly, the room felt smaller. Before we go further, what would you do in that moment? Would you push harder right away? Or would you sit back and wait to understand what you're actually dealing with? Because that choice matters more than it seems. I leaned back in my chair, not because I was comfortable, but because I needed distance. From her, from a situation, from the version of reality that was starting to crack. Madison and I didn't have secrets like this. At least, I didn't think we did. We had disagreements. We had quiet days. We had moments where one of us pulled back. But we didn't fabricate entire locations. We didn't create alternate versions of where we were. That wasn't us. Or maybe it was. Maybe I just hadn't noticed yet. Claire stood up and walked toward the kitchen. Her movements were precise, measured. She didn't look back at me. She didn't ask another question. She just left the room. And that silence she left behind felt intentional. Like she was giving me space to think. Or maybe to doubt myself. I pulled out my phone again. The message was still there. Simple, short, carefully worded. At my mom's. Not I'm with my mom. Not I came to visit. Just enough detail to sound normal. Not enough to invite questions. I typed back slowly. Your mom says you're not here. I didn't hit send right away. I watched the words. Consider them. Because once I sent that message, there was no pretending anymore. No soft version of this. No way to ignore what was happening. I pressed send, and then I waited. Minutes passed. Not many, but enough to feel long. Long enough for doubt to creep in. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. Maybe she meant earlier. Maybe Claire forgot. Maybe I was overthinking. The reply came at 8:23 p.m. That's weird. I'm literally here. I stared at the screen. There was something unsettling about how normal that sentence looked. No panique. No urgency. No attempt to clarify. Just a calm contradiction. And suddenly, it wasn't just about where she was. It was about why she needed me to believe she was somewhere else. Claire returned to the room. She sat down across from me again. Same posture. Same calm expression. But this time, I noticed something different. She was watching me. Not directly, but closely enough to read reactions. You seem distracted, she said. Her tone was neutral, almost kind. I looked at her, and for the first time, I wondered how much she knew. Not just about this moment, but about Madison. About us. About whatever was happening behind the scenes. Madison says she's here right now. I repeated it, this time slower, more deliberate. Claire exhaled softly. Not frustrated, not surprised, just resigned. She does that sometimes. The words landed heavier than anything else that had been said. Because they weren't defensive. They weren't confused. They were familiar. As if this wasn't new. as if this wasn't the first time reality had been adjusted. What does that mean? I asked. Claire folded her hands together. She tells people what they expect to hear. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Just the slow realization that there was a version of Madison I hadn't fully seen. And maybe Claire had. For a long time. She told me she was here. I said. Yes, Claire replied. And you expected her to be. The simplicity of that answer made it worse. Because it suggested something deeper than a lie. It suggested a pattern. A system. A way of navigating relationships by controlling perception. I looked down at my phone again. At the message. At the calm, ordinary words that now felt carefully constructed. And for the first time, I wasn't trying to figure out where Madison was. I was trying to figure out who she was. Because those are not the same question. Another message came in. Why are you asking her? That's weird. There it was. A shift. Subtle but clear. Not defensive, but redirecting. Turning the focus back on me. Making my reaction the issue. Not her inconsistency. And that was the moment everything clicked into place. Not perfectly. Not completely. But enough to understand the direction of this. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't coincidence. This was control. Control over what I knew. Control over what I questioned. Control over how much reality I was allowed to see. Before we continue, be honest with yourself. At what point does trust stop being trust and start becoming something else entirely? I put my phone down, not because I didn't care anymore, but because I needed to stop reacting and start observing. Claire didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. Her silence now felt different. Less like avoidance. More like confirmation. I stayed for another 10 minutes. We talked about neutral things. Work. Weather. The kind of conversation people have when something important is sitting just beneath the surface, unspoken but fully present. Then I stood up. I thanked her for the tea. She nodded. And as I walked toward the door, she said something quietly. You deserve clarity. I paused. Just for a second. Then I left. Outside, the air felt different. Not lighter. Just clearer. Like something had been stripped away. I looked at my phone one last time. No new messages. No explanation. No correction. And that was the answer. Because sometimes, what isn't said tells you everything you need to know. I didn't call her that night. I didn't argue. I didn't demand answers. Because the situation didn't need more words. It needed distance. It needed time. And most of all, it needed honesty, something that clearly wasn't present right now. Over the next few days, Madison reached out. Casual messages. Normal tone. As if nothing had happened. As if the version of reality she created was still intact. But wasn't. Not anymore. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And once you question the foundation, everything built on top of it starts to shift. When we finally spoke in person, there was no confrontation. No dramatic scene. Just a quiet conversation. Measured. Direct. I asked simple questions. She gave incomplete answers. Not lies this time, but not truth either. And that space between those two things, that's where everything fell apart. We didn't end things that day. Not immediately. Because endings don't always happen in a single moment. Sometimes they happen slowly. Through distance. Through realization. Through the quiet understanding that something fundamental is missing. And for me, that thing was trust. Not just trust in her words, but trust in the reality we were sharing. Because if that can be altered, even slightly, then nothing else is stable. And eventually, that becomes impossible to carry forward. So we let it go. Not with anger. Not with blame. Just with clarity. The kind Claire mentioned that night. The kind I didn't realize I needed until everything started to unravel.